Welcome back to Chief Studios. My name is Taylor Bell. Pleasure to have you in on this Tuesday afternoon. What a disaster. What an absolute disaster. As the title of the thumbnail describes, Mahomes getting tackled while losing the ball. One of the many mistakes the team made seemingly all game. Defense played well enough for the average offensive performance from Kansas City should be or should win, right? 20 points your defense holds the opposing team to. Plenty good to get a win in any one of the years past, right? It was like everything fell apart all in front of the country, in front of the whole country. Before we get into specifics of where the seams came apart, it's almost like that the Chiefs are playing out their issues in front of the world, right? In front of the audience, in front of the nation, because it looks like a team that just entered the season. It looks like a team that doesn't have much practice time. They don't look in sync. You make major mistakes at the very worst times. Before the game started, I was on the phone with my dad, wishing my mom and dad a Merry Christmas, and we were talking about the injuries. And I was going down the injury report, and I was like, you know what, the most current game time injury report has not come out. In about 3/4 of the way through the conversation, I refreshed the injury report. Boom, it was live. When I saw the starting left tackle was out of the game due to a neck injury, I knew it was downhill from there. The offensive line could not give Mahomes enough time to pass. I think that's the root cause of the issues during yesterday's game. He was scrambling for his life. A defender would get through on almost every play, it seemed like. So I think that's the root cause of the issues from yesterday. Now, there were some bad play calls, there were some bad plays, there were some bad throws, and it happened all game long. Struggled to move the ball up and down the field. And in a game where your defense holds the opposing quarterback, we'll get into the stats, to less than 100 yards passing, and you've all heard the stat, right? I think he did not complete a pass. I think he completed one in the fourth quarter, but like for almost 2.5 quarters, the opposing team didn't even complete a pass. So this was a very winnable game if you just have an average offensive performance. They had a abysmal offensive performance. When your team lacks the talent in the backfield because your starting running back got hurt with a concussion, and then you lack the elite talent with the wideouts, you cannot afford to have major mistakes. You get a fumble deep into you get a fumble on the opponent's on your own, what was it, 5-yard line, something like that. So you get a costly fumble, turnover, touchdown. You get a pick six as well. Those are, look, when I mentioned, I think it was a week or two ago, when your margins are very thin like the Chiefs are, you cannot afford a major mistake. A pick six, a fumble recovery for touchdown. You cannot afford to just give up 7 points at any point in any game. And they did it twice. So they give the opponent 14 points. Now, I've also mentioned when you're not exceedingly talented as far as elite level talent in the NFL, 1 or 2 big plays is probably the difference in the game. It's probably the difference in most games, right? And this was a perfect example because Now, I know there's a lot of different scenarios and plays that go into the outcome of every game. But if you narrow it down and just say, okay, if those two mistakes did not happen, you wipe away 14 points from the opposing team, could have won, right? Although they didn't play like they deserved to win. They didn't play like they deserved to beat anybody yesterday, especially the Raiders. But that's what happens. You turn the ball over, the defense scores a couple touchdowns, and that's the difference of the game. So not just the turnovers, but look, if you take those two turnovers away, let's say those two turnovers and two touchdowns did not happen, still not pretty, all right? So the Raiders would only score what? Not much, right? And neither would the Chiefs. They were struggling. Their running game is non-existent, and Mahomes was throwing off of his back foot for most of the game because he had one or two defenders in his face every play. So not pretty. Not much else you can say, but just the thumbnail says it all. Absolute disaster. So where do we go from here? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anything can be corrected. As I've mentioned, even in the first half of the season, this does not look good. I do not have much hope going into the playoffs. I believe they'll probably get lucky if they reach the AFC championship. Right now, they, depending on where they land or their seed, if you get home field advantage or not, that could play a major factor. But my guess is they're one and done in the playoffs, so may win one game and lose the following game. So it just doesn't look like the right collection of players and personnel. I don't think I've heard a couple of people say today, Eric Bieniemy, their offensive coordinator from last year, from years past, that went on to Washington Commanders this year. I don't think he's the difference. I think it has to do with you have an aging player in Kelsey. Don't even get me started. I think he's seriously done. I think, look, when you lose it, when these NFL players lose it, it's seemingly overnight. And this is a perfect example. You cannot tell me he's lost a step. He looks old. He looks frail. Frustration's starting to set in. He's emotional. He's getting frustrated because he's not playing well. He came out of the gates, I think, the first month of the season, right? The first 3 games or so, he looked pretty damn good. In fact, Mahomes leaned on him. I know he had an injury right in there, but the first 2 games that he played, he looked really good. And Mahomes was kept on throwing the ball. But since then, as you get into the second half of the season, you see his performance start to drop off. Now, remember, in years past, he was steadily performing all the way through the season into the playoffs. Now his performance is nosediving. He's not as fast as he used to be. He can't get out of his breaks as fast as he used to. His route running, he just looks slow. The DBs, the safeties, even the linebackers are staying in his hip pocket. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last year, or if next year is at the most his last year. I think he's mentally checked out too, honestly. I honestly do. Look, there's a lot of issues. We'll get into it whenever the season ends, whenever that is. We'll get into the offseason, what we need to do to correct it. But moving into the playoffs, you still have a chance to get a higher seed. I believe the second, we'll get into it. I believe the Baltimore's wrapped up the number 1 spot in the AFC. I believe you might still be able to, if you went out, which doesn't look good right now, but if you do, I believe you could still get the second spot in the AFC. We'll take a look. But look, it's fasten your seatbelts and hang on for the ride as we go into the playoffs. What can be done? I don't think much is correctable here in the next week or two. It's you are what you are, right? I mean, any hopes that they get drastically better yesterday was a sealed stamped. It's a no-go. This is what they are, and this is what they're going to be going to the playoffs. So it might be ugly. It might be an ugly playoff loss. And it is what it is, right? It is what it is. But let's see. Let me get into the statistics. Check out these stats. You're not going to believe this stuff. Look at this. Aiden O'Connell, 62 yards. Now, Mahomes, look, it was not a good day for any of the Chiefs, really. Mahomes was your leading rusher with 53 yards. That's an issue. And not pretty, right? Look, player stats. You got rushing. Pacheco was out with an injury. Clyde's Edward-Helaire, nothing. Just an absolute stinker of a game. And look at, the defensive stats don't really jump out at you either, right? It was a weird game. Just one you want to erase out of your memory. Now, the Chiefs. It was an abysmal game by the Raiders. That's how bad it looked for the Chiefs, because any game in the past that the Chiefs have played would have beaten this Raiders team yesterday. It was just that bad of a performance from Kansas City's offense. The Raiders looked horrible looked bad as well, but the Chiefs just look absolute worse. One you want to erase out of your brain, as I mentioned, you got the fumble here, the interception, and you got 5 penalties for 44 yards. Total plays 74-52, Kansas City. You get more first downs. Just, what a bad game. Good Lord. All right, let's see what else we have. Who do we got next? It looks like we're going to have the Bengals Sunday at 3 o'clock in Arrowhead Stadium, which is not an easy game. Their backup quarterback is playing really good. I think he had one decent game last week, but the previous 3 weeks have looked like a starter. So this is not going to be an easy game. They're a much better team than the Raiders. So the Chiefs are going to have to play much better to even be in this game. And the Chargers, look, they got a backup quarterback, so you might be able to get a win here. But this Bengals team could very well come into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. And I think we'll get a win against the Chargers. So, look, if you win one more game and lose one more game, that puts us at, let's see. That would put us at 9-6 for the season if we lose one game and win one game. So a season you would like to forget. Now, going into last night's game, the much anticipated Baltimore versus San Francisco, highly touted, the very two best teams in the NFL, and my God, was it a show. The Ravens go into San Francisco and completely shock everybody. I'm sure minus the Ravens fans, but my God, was that dramatic. They bullied the bully. San Francisco all year, they bullied Dallas. They bullied the Chargers. They bullied every team that they faced. Just dominant performance. Even had Brock Purdy, the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, in consideration for the MVP race. Christian McCaffrey, the running back, MVP race. Ballers all over the roster, all over the field. Offense, defense, special teams is pretty decent. Everybody picked them as the second half of the season kept on rolling through as probably the favorite for the Super Bowl and or a Super Bowl win. As I mentioned, Brock Purdy, MVP. Baltimore comes in as a good team. Look, this is the number one team, San Francisco, in the NFC, and the number one team in the AFC in Baltimore facing each other. And my God, did it look like a mismatch? Baltimore came in and dominated from the start of the first quarter to the end of the fourth quarter. Dominant performance. doing whatever they wanted. Brock Purdy throws, what did he have? 4 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. Looked like he lost his confidence. The only bright spot for the 49ers was Christian McCaffrey. Now, as the game went on, it looked like a little shaky play call. It looked like Kyle Shanahan may have lost his confidence as well in Brock Purdy. A lot of the pass plays were dump offs, were screens, were short throws. There were a couple down the field, but Baltimore looks like the head-on favorite for the Super Bowl. And I think this takes Purdy out of the MVP discussion. Now, I think you're allowed to have one stinker, one bad game, because as Dak Prescott had a really, really, really bad game 2 weeks ago, but kind of took him out of the conversation. I think this will take Brock Purdy out of the conversation, and I want to see how he responds in their next game. But going back to MVP, Lamar Jackson was my dark horse MVP. Now, there was talks of Tyreek Hill. I said maybe Purdy, but I still need him to prove it, right? Because you can go on a 16, 17, even 20-game streak of really good play because the defenses don't really have a lot of tape on you, don't really know how to play you yet. And it looks like Baltimore figured it out. They were running the ball. They were bullying, as I mentioned, hard hits, touchdowns all over the field. Defense looks phenomenal. And I think Lamar Jackson just solidified his number one spot as the MVP vote. These defenses, he's been in the league for what? I mean, he's already won one. I think that was in 2019, something like that. It was a few years ago. So we've already known he's dominant, and these defenses still, even with the best defensive personnel on the field in San Francisco 49ers, still didn't know what to do with him. He's that dominant. He looked like the fastest player on the field. He looked like the player with the most confidence, especially the quarterback with the most confidence. Just an absolute phenomenal performance by Lamar Jackson. This is why I say, every now and then you'll hear me say this, but I've always believed if I cannot have Mahomes as my number one QB, I'm taking Lamar Jackson. And it's for this reason. He's the fastest player on the field. And you can tell from his rookie year, his passing has progressed into just an absolute wonderful thrower of the ball. Man, he throws a nice football. The defenses still don't know what to do with him. Is he going to run it or is he going to pass it? Is he going to run it or is he going to pass it? And I'm glad to see the Ravens. They had similar issues to what the Chiefs had. Now, the Chiefs have not obviously figured those issues out, but at wide receiver, early on in the year, there was some players missed some time. Some wide receivers for the Ravens missed some times due to injuries, some games due to injuries. They also, the timing seemed to be off. They could never get their whole starting wide receiving core on the field together at the same time. And over these last couple of weeks, especially tonight, looks like they put it all together. They had a really good performance last week, and I believe a solid performance the week before. But this is exactly what you're looking for in a Super Bowl team. They're trending at late in the season. They're playing their best football as the end of the season approaches. So I think Baltimore is the clear and far favorite for the season's ripe for them to win a Super Bowl. Kansas City's down. They will not even last. It would look like last night's game. I believe if the Chiefs faced the Ravens, I think the Chiefs would get demolished. Any team in the AFC will get demolished. I think if the Ravens don't make it to the Super Bowl, that would be a disaster, right? Because they look head and shoulders better than any AFC team, and they just took the number one NFC team and smashed them. So I think they are the lead favorite for a Super Bowl pick, not only to make it, but to win it. And I think last night solidified Lamar Jackson's MVP, his second MVP. Now, they have 2 more games remaining, and obviously, we'll have to see how that goes. But last night made a huge statement. The whole country was watching, and he did not disappoint. Even in a blowout, I love to watch because I just love to see again, I love to watch Baltimore play. I love Lamar Jackson. Just, you know, there's a one word, and also how Mahomes is described as magic. He does magical stuff on the field. You don't see. I compared him last show to Magic Johnson, right? That's how he got his nickname. He did magical stuff on the court. That's what Mahomes does. He does. It's like a wizard out there. If I had one word to describe Lamar Jackson, and I was thinking of this last night during the game, I think it's dynamic. Dynamic, right? As I mentioned, his passing has gotten much, much better, and he's the fastest guy on the field. It's like you take, and he's very smart too. His football IQ is actually very, very high, and I think that's why he's dynamic, right? So he puts all three together. That is what makes you a dynamic talent, a dynamic elite player. That is what describes an NFL MVP. Dynamic. If he was not in their team, probably would be 500, right? He makes all the difference in the world. He's not only the fastest player on the field, as I mentioned, his passing game is approaching elite, and his football IQ is very, very smart, and he leads the number one team in the league right now, best record and best playing. So I think Lamar Jackson is on his way to a second MVP, and I look forward to watching the rest of their games. I'm a Chiefs fan, yes, but I love football, right? So he is the exact reason why I love to watch football. Him and Mahomes, right? That's the whole reason. I love dynamic. I love magic. I love stuff that makes your jaw drop and say, "Whoa, what did I just see?" You know, it's that type of stuff. So look, Mahomes and the Chiefs right now, they don't have the magic. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they are dynamic. So I think that sums up yesterday's games, Christmas Day games, in a bun. I did not watch the Philly and Giants game. I know it was close. I was keeping an eye on the score, but we had stuff going on, and I was, I had put my mind on watching the Chiefs and the Ravens. So that's what I did. But that'll do it for this episode of the wrap up of the Christmas Day game. Stay tuned. I will come back and review the next game versus the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see who's on the injury report. We do have some injuries from yesterday's game. Pacheco, as I mentioned, but I'm going to also dive into it. I think the next injury report should be out here in the next 30 minutes or so. So I will probably do a new episode tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Wednesday? Yeah, probably Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow and see. We'll preview the Cincinnati game. So thank you very much for joining us. I do appreciate the time. My name is Taylor Bell, and this is Chief Studios. Peace.